So what happened, though, is Mullah Omar and the Taliban decided, Mullah Omar had a vision in 2000. He said it was no longer consistent with Islamic principles to grow more poppies. So he imposed prohibition in a way that only the Taliban have gotten away with. Because when they make threats, it's really quite serious. They actually did they really did eliminate about 90% of the poppy crop for that year. And they were rewarded by Western governments for doing that. Well, what he did by outlawing the growing of poppy was that, notice he didn't say you couldn't traffic in existing stockpiles of opium. You just couldn't produce more poppies, produce more opium. Whether he had this in mind or not, a lot of his colleagues in the Taliban, particularly in the leadership, behaved as any cartel would behave. When you have a glut, you cut off the supply, and you don't overproduce. They were able to drive that $30 kilo of opium up to $740 a kilo. It sat in the warehouse. Nothing happened to it except prohibition. That's the power of prohibition economics. And when it reached that $740 range, the time that it did this was September 11th, 2001. That was the peak price in Afghanistan for opium, kilo of opium, $740. Right after 9/11, that kilo price collapses down to about $70. People were dumping their opium stocks on the market. Farmers were taking it out of stores, trying to sell it, either to raise some money to flee across the border because the bombing from the war was about to come, or to empty out the warehouses. They were afraid the warehouses might get bombed or found out and they'd be destroyed, they'd lose all their investments. So people began dumping opium poppies, or opium supplies on the market. Under U.S. occupation, even the threat of manual eradication, which is what they did under the Bush administration, it was a half-hearted attempt. It was they only eradicated a small amount. But even that was enough to create enough of a price support to keep the prices of opium elevated and attractive to farmers. So it went from $740 on 9/11 down to about $70, up to a couple $100 range, and it has continued to fall steadily since then. Today it's about $60 or so a kilo, and it could fall even further if they don't disturb the markets. When that kilo price falls to that $30 to $40 range, it becomes very attractive then for farmers to plant other crops. So in other words, it would be Adam Smith's invisible hand that gets these farmers to plant other crops rather than forced eradication at gunpoint by NATO and US forces. What that will do is create a temporary switch to licit crops, right? But it's only temporary because as the supply then dries up, they'll be born, the prices will come back up, and there'll be an incentive then to replant opium poppies. But what it does do is it gives the administration about a year, maybe 2 years at most, a window of opportunity. As the farmers plant legal crops, they have a small window to bring in infrastructure projects, to create roads, access to markets, to clean up corruption, to bring in credit for farmers so they can actually invest in other crops. And they have to thread so many needles in such a perfect sequence that I'm not entirely optimistic, given the history of what the U.S. has done in Afghanistan. But the principle is an important one, because this is the first major admission by a drug warrior, the UN drug czar, that the law of supply and demand has something to do with why people grow these crops. That's been the elephant in the living room. The drug warriors don't want to talk about that because the moment they talk about it, you opened up this problem of prohibition economics, and they want to pretend it doesn't exist. And certainly the U.S. drug warriors don't want to talk about this. It's try to deal with this problem without talking about prohibition economics is a bit like taking your car to the garage and saying, my car's broken, I want you to fix it, but I have one requirement. You may not open the hood. You can put more air in the tire, put some more gas in, maybe clean the windshield, but you can't open the hood. And if you can't do that, then you'll never be able to access the engine that drives this thing. The engine in this case is prohibition economics. And just to give you a sense of how potent this fear is, this week, in fact today I believe, in the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, not Judiciary, different committee, sorry, Senator Jim Webb from Virginia. Former Republican, former Secretary of the Navy, now a Democrat and a crusader against over-incarceration in this country, actually a very courageous senator pertaining on this issue, has proposed a commission to look at our criminal justice policy, congressionally mandated commission, independent commission, and they would and he said everything would be on the table, including drug policy, including decriminalization, legalization, whatever options, but we would look at, get a fresh start and look at why we're incarcerating so many people. And just to give you a sense of how many people are incarcerating, the U.S. is about 2.3 million people behind bars right now. There are only about 9 million prisoners on planet Earth. Okay, so with less than 5% of the planet's population, we have about 1/4 of the planet's prisoners. We operate the largest penal system on Earth. We incarcerate more people than any other country, both in per capita and in absolute numbers as well. And of those 2.3 million people behind bars, about 1/4 of them are there for nonviolent drug offenses. Right? That's more people than the entire European Union locks up for all offenses combined. And they have almost 200 million more people than we do here in the States. And so Senator Webb's commission would have full reign to look at these issues. In comes Senator Grassley from Iowa, Republican, staunch drug warrior, introduces an amendment saying this commission may not discuss anything to do with decriminalization, legalization, regulation, anything that would contravene existing drug laws. Right? And again, that's like taking your car mechanic, don't open the hood. Senator Grassley's measure is a last gasp effort on the part of drug warriors to not open this box. And another analogy is imagine it's 1492, and King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, they're saying to Captain Columbus, we wish you great luck and success in your voyage. We hope you find this new route to the Spice Islands. But we have one royal command. You may not talk about this round earth concept. It's heretical and no one believes it. And just don't talk about that. But good luck on your voyage, finding your way, to the other side of the earth. Senator Grassley's proposal is the modern day equivalent of the flat earthers. It's fundamentally irrational. Imagine, having a fact-finding commission and saying before the first hearing's even held, I don't want to know. Don't even talk about it. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. That's what this measure is like. I'll give you a little tour visually of what this is about. And I'll take the example of Colombia. And some of these principles can be applied to Afghanistan as well. So just to give you a sense of what people are going through, this is the main instrument of our policy, the crop duster. They fly much higher than they're supposed to. This is not Kansas. This is Colombia. This is the Piedmont region of the Andes. It's very hilly terrain. There are guerrillas with AK-47s shooting at these planes all the time. So they fly, the pilots don't fly at head-top level the way they do in Kansas. And they fly much higher, and the chemicals get carried by the wind. About 20 seconds after this plane leaves the field of vision here, that stream of vapor, I used to think of it as rain kind of falling to the ground. It's not rain. It creates a giant gas cloud. And the closest thing I can compare it to would be if you've ever seen the newsreel footage from World War I, when they used poison gas, how it just hangs there. That's what these things do. It creates a giant gas cloud, and the crosswinds will pick it up and move it around. It will destroy all kinds of other crops, food crops, the environment, fish ponds, people. If you're caught in the middle of this gas cloud, you can't escape. You have to breathe several times as you're going to the edge of this cloud to try to escape it. People get it all over themselves. Here the plane is flying, again, high altitude, and again toward a house, which is technically illegal. And they spray all kinds of crops that aren't necessarily coca. In fact, this is taken at an agricultural school, internationally funded, where we teach farmers in Colombia, this is Putumayo, Colombia, in southern Colombia, we teach them to grow other crops besides coca. We sprayed that as well.